And, okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Leia of the Vargas Museum, and welcome to Building the Children's Museum of Philippine Art Tumba-Tumba Webinar. This is an online conversation with CANVAS, the Center for Art, New Ventures, and Sustainable Development, and Arkisens, in line with the exhibition Seeking Balance. So Seeking Balance is CANVAS's 15th anniversary show. We at the Vargas Museum and CANVAS would have loved to see you all at the museum enjoying the exhibition, but the global pandemic has altered our current reality. But do not fret, as we can still see the exhibition in virtual form. Visit the social media platforms of the Vargas Museum and CANVAS to see the show. So a little bit about Seeking Balance. Um, Established in 2005, CANVAS celebrates in Seeking Balance the organization's relentless growth, marked by the challenge of finding balance while making a difference in various local communities through visual art and children's books. The exhibition is a reflection of their tireless efforts to realize their dreams and clinch great impact, all that leads to the current mission of building the Children's Museum Philippine Art or Tumba-Tumba. For Seeking Balance, CANVAS gathers works from artists Leonardo Aguinaldo, Darby Alcoseba, John Paul Antido, Marcel Antonio, Jojo Barha, Don Brian Bunyag, Demetrio de la Cruz, Cedric de la Paz, Liza Flores, Manny Garibay, Louis Gonzalez, June Impas, Marcos Tignani, Dante Lerma, Louis Manaig, Chad Montero, Jason Moss, Otto Neri, Romel Obemio, Jim Orencio, Jaime Pacena, Blick Pinas, Lab Matayona, Jomec Tejido, Jojit Solano, and the groups Biskeg Pangasinan Art Collective, Durian Collective, Sangbiahe Artist Collective, Studio 1616, The Working Animals. All are prompted to present their art that interrogates the dualities in life and the search to strike a balance in such. The works are large in size to amplify the power of the images and to enable their viewing from a distance, to reveal the bigger picture and empower everyone to imagine and believe that solid footing can be found even in a world and future that are suddenly more uncertain as ever. Okay, so today we are joined by CANVAS founder and director Attorney Gigo Alampay, CANVAS curator Jaime Pacena II, and Arkisens partner Chok Manalo to discuss the flagship project of CANVAS, the Tumba-Tumba Children's Museum of Philippine Art. We'll hear them talk about the dream, how this dream was designed, and what steps are being taken to turn this dream into reality. We'll also have a Q&A portion after the talk, so if you have questions, just type them in the comments below as we go along. Then, later, we'll get back to these questions and discuss with our panelists. All right. So let's start off with Attorney Gigo Alampay. How did CANVAS come to be, and what led to the dream of the Children's Museum of Philippine Art? So let me first introduce Attorney Alampay. He is the founder and executive director of the nonprofit organization CANVAS, which works with the creative community to promote children's literacy, explore national identity, and broaden public awareness of Philippine art, culture, and the environment. He is also a policy consultant and lawyer. He graduated from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and obtained graduate degrees from the University of San Diego and University of California, San Diego. So let's hear from Attorney Gigo Alampay. All right, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gigo Alampay. I'm the executive director of CANVAS, and what I'll talk about today is a short introduction to Tumba-Tumba. I'll talk about the idea of where the idea of a children's museum came from, why it's important to us in CANVAS, and what the overall vision is. So as most of you are probably aware, CANVAS is a nonprofit that publishes children's books. Most of the books arose from a unique story writing competition based on artworks by some of the most talented Filipino artists around. We use the artworks to challenge Filipino writers to come up with a story for children. So these are some of the contest pieces that we've commissioned from the artists over the years. For the first few years, we held the competition only once a year, but these days we could be holding as many as 4 competitions per year. In fact, we have one presently ongoing. It's for that painting by Louis Manaig on the lower left corner. And that would be our 28th story competition. The winning story is published as a hardbound picture book, but we also produce softcover versions of some of these books, which are then given away to children in public schools and disadvantaged communities throughout the country. For many of the children, ours will be the very first book they get to call their own. CANVAS has another program, the Art for Development program. Through this program, we encourage and provide opportunities for the use of art to explore social issues that CANVAS is particularly interested in, like national identity, human rights, and the environment. So under this program, we hold an annual art exhibition where we challenge artists to respond to an issue or question that we identify. We started this in 2009 with a question, what does it mean to be Filipino? We also commission art installations like this nondescript structure that we quietly placed in the middle of UP Sunken Garden a few years ago. Some people thought it was a makeshift comfort room, but inside, visitors were treated to one of Mark Justiniani's most important works, The Settlement. Using lights and mirrors, visitors were immersed inside the work and given the illusion of infinity. More relevantly, this piece was a commentary on the Marcos regime, human rights, martial law, and the inordinate and often abused powers of Malacanang Palace. So why do we give away books and mount public art exhibitions? It's because CANVAS lives by this mantra, that a child with art and stories can change the world. Art and stories, we believe, have transformative powers that can help the child rise above his or her potential. So for CANVAS, it's all about expanding access to art and stories. Giving children access to art and stories is the reason why we give away books, now by the hundreds of thousands. It's why we do our annual outdoor banner project, where we line high pedestrian traffic venues like UP's majestic Academic Oval with artworks every year. It's our way of bringing artworks and issues closer to the public. We like to say that tens of thousands of people see this outdoor art gallery that we create each year, making it one of the most visited annual shows anywhere. It's also why we support street artists like Ang Guerrilla, among others. And why we supported the public art installation of Mark Justiniani that I mentioned earlier. Again, it's a way of bringing art and stories to the public, because art and stories in the hands of a person, but most especially a child, are tools that can make this world a better place. So the dream of now building a children's museum of Philippine art is just another manifestation of that desire to bring art and stories more available to children. It is also by far our most ambitious dream. Over the past 15 years, CANVAS has largely operated on its own, relying and trusting only on the artists and writers with whom we've worked. But the Tumba-Tumba Children's Museum of Art, of Philippine art, is a totally different animal. It will require not just funding and resources that are far beyond what we've raised in the past, but also convincing other people, organizations, corporations, local governments, and other government agencies to join us in this journey. The cliche, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, comes to mind. But we take confident consolation in the fact that we are not actually beginning from scratch. We are actually several steps ahead. First of all, one thing that we did right all these years was to acquire at least one artwork from all the exhibitions and projects we've had since 2005. So we've been able to quietly amass a collection of artworks that we think can anchor a children's museum of Philippine art. We believe that many of the artists who will eventually emerge as the important ones from this generation are represented in this collection. Moreover, because we don't see ourselves as stopping or even slowing down anytime soon, this collection is growing. The collection also includes several large-scale pieces that can serve as good photo pieces to provide souvenirs for visitors when they visit the museum. Aside from the artworks, we also have our land. We've acquired a 15,000 square meter piece of raw land in Ibaan, Batangas, where we hope to build the museum. Why Ibaan? First of all, I have roots there. My parents own a small piece of land beside where we will build our museum. Second, the prices for land there is not yet that high, so we could afford to purchase this piece of gorgeous rolling land. And then it is Batangas, one of the fastest growing regions in the country. There are many schools, both public and private, near it. It's only a couple of hours away from Metro Manila, making it an ideal day trip venue for people looking to do something meaningful on a weekend or holiday, after the pandemic is solved, of course, which we hope it will be by the time we achieve this dream. Finally, and most importantly, we have a vision for the museum. We don't see it as just a place where artworks are hung and displayed for people to passively view. We believe that the children deserve more and that children will be looking for more. So over the past few years, we've been organizing and curating our art exhibitions in a way that shows what we want our museum to be. And it also allows us to experiment on what might work or what might not work. We've tried to create spaces that can trigger imaginations and organize them in a manner that allows children to run and interact with the artworks. And when we say children, we mean children of all ages. Because in the end, for us, we want the museum to be remembered not for the building and not for the artworks, but for the experience that it will give and the memories that it will create. I don't really know what the Tumba-Tumba Children's Museum of Philippine Art will eventually look like, but I do know what I want it to feel like. So when we were thinking about the curation and thinking about the architecture, I wrote down what I wanted in a children's museum and gave it to our next speakers so that they will have some idea and context as they worked on the architecture and curation to bring this dream to life. So this is what I wrote. Books and art create wonder and magic. They open children to possibilities. Children will find books and art everywhere in and around our museum. Our museum will provide spaces that inspire, feel safe, and create memories that children will cherish. One day, they will look back and remember, and they will want to bring their children here in our museum. Our museum will give children experiences that allow them to take risks. They will learn that mistakes are not failures and that success is earned. Our museum will let children do all the things that children do better than anyone else. Play with abandon. Trust completely. Sleep through anything. Forgive and forget. Learn like a sponge. Imagine without boundaries. Explore without fear. Love without conditions. We will never underestimate a child. We will never give up hope in any child. We will let the children be, because we know that any child can change the world. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sir Gigo. We too at the Vargas believe that a child with art and stories can change the world. And we'd also like to share with those who are tuning in that before the pandemic, Canvas shows really are one of the most interesting shows that we have, especially when there are children around. And it gives us great joy to see them reading and looking at the art. All right. So next, how was the dream designed, and what was the design process like for a children's museum? So let's hear from Chok Manalo of Arkisens. So a little intro about Sir Chok. He graduated from the University of Santo Tomas's College of Architecture and Fine Arts and is currently taking up MA Architecture Urban Design track at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. He was featured in the 20 Outstanding Young Filipino Designers in 2013. Manalo is one of the founding partners of Arkisens, established in 2005. Works and entries by the architecture firm has been recognized in local competitions such as Blueprint Magazine's annual Visionary Design Competition and Metrobank Art and Design Excellence (MEAD) Architecture Recognition Program, and has been published in both local and international publications. So now let's hear from Sir Chok Manalo.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Leah. Okay, so first of all, I would like to congratulate Gigo and CANVAS on their 15th anniversary. Coincidentally, Arkisens is also celebrating its 15th anniversary this year, and we're very excited, more than ever, to be working with you guys for Tumba-Tumba. I'm the partner in charge for this project, together with project leader Ro Picardo. Although with all our other projects, we try to involve everyone in the team as much as we can. So I would also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge partner Eds Rivera, team leader Jeff Donges, and our design architects who were very much involved with the project, Steph Igarta and Jonah Rigo, who actually are both graduates of the UP Arki. Okay. Sige. So as Gigo previously mentioned, the Tumba-Tumba Museum would be situated in Ibaan, Batangas. It's very much accessible via the Star Tollway. So as with all our other projects, we had to take into consideration basic site conditions first, before we proceed with the design project. So basic considerations such as required setbacks, road widening plans by the local government, and future developments. Again, these are very basic considerations such as orientation, but we felt that since we'll be dealing with very sensitive materials and artworks, we felt that orientation would play a big part also. And then there's the facing that is required by CANVAS. And so the museum would be situated, obviously, it's phase one of the development. So aside from those site considerations, before we decided to really start thinking about the architecture and the planning for the project, of course, we wanted to absorb as much as we can the ideals and aspirations of CANVAS, no, for the project. No? And for CANVAS, Tumba-Tumba, they want Tumba-Tumba to be a museum that inspires and triggers imagination, not just for the visitors, but also for the artists involved. No? Again, they wanted it to have a sense that there's no beginning and no end. And so as the architects, we wanted our design ideals to be aligned with what CANVAS is aspiring for. No? So we were imagining, we wanted to envision engaging spaces. Apologies, guys. Minor glitch. Sorry. Okay. Ayan. So thank you to those who are sending me messages. Sorry. Okay. Sige. So yeah. So I'll just backtrack a little with the slides. No? So these were the slides that I was talking about a while ago. Okay, so again, as the designers, we wanted to align our ideals with CANVAS's ideas also for the museum. No? And so we were, before we even start with thinking about, how the museum should look like, physically, we were envisioning the architecture and the spaces that, would inspire creativity. These spaces should be engaging, for the children, not just for the children, but also for their parents and their companions, and for the other museum goers. The spaces should trigger imagination also. And so with those ideas, as the architects for the project, we also wanted to have our own design agenda for designing the museum. And we felt that the museum should allow the children to be confident and to raise their self-esteem. If we would be able to come up with an architecture and spaces that would encourage them to learn, then we felt that would be a good measure of how the museum would be successful. So in short, we felt that it should be an architecture that empowers children, or maybe at least it should be an attempt to generate the conditions that would allow or give the opportunity for children empowerment. So then also we felt that there should be some sense of recklessness for the kids who will be, and for the other visitors who will be in the museum. There should be elements of surprise. The spaces should promote discovery. And again, it should be engaging spaces and not boring spaces. And so with those ideals, we tried to come up with diagrams and sketches to jumpstart the program for the museum. We were inspired by the idea of Gigo and CANVAS, the idea of the museum having a no beginning or no end. So we envision these pockets of spaces that are connected to each other. This is also another scheme that we almost went with because the spaces are arranged in some sort of a circular or radial arrangement. So it kind of supports the idea of there's no beginning, no end. But we realized that it's still, it kind of imposes the experience, na you either go clockwise or counterclockwise. No? So we had to pause and take a step back and rethink again, no, the configuration for the spaces of the museum. And so we had to pause and we had to look at what we are working with. And one of the major directives of Gigo was, for us, was there should be no trees to be removed, no, or displaced in designing the museum. And so we said, what if we took off from there and let the condition of the site dictate how we should go about with the planning of the spaces, no? And so we came up with this configuration wherein the circulation spaces were actually dictated by the placement of the trees, and ultimately the shape of the eventual structures within the development were shaped by actually the placement of the existing trees. And so from there we developed the spaces for the museum as required also by CANVAS, no? So there are actually three major components of the museum: Hall 1, Hall 2, and Air, or the artist in residence. And the programs and the curation will be explained in detail by J Pacena later on. No? So we kind of try to weave through, no, the existing trees and the spaces that we needed to implement. And that gave us some sort of idea of how to manifest, no, the physical attributes of the museum. So this is the progress that we have right now for the spaces and schematic floor plans for the museum. And then these are the possible routes, no, that the museum goers could take while visiting Tumba-Tumba. We were inspired that that CANVAS wanted it to be an experience that has no beginning and no end, and so we felt that there's the museum goer should also have the ability to navigate rather than to follow a given route while in the museum. Okay, so I'll be walking you guys through some of the images that we've developed over the years. So again, this is the first component of major component of the museum, Hall 1. No? And this is what you see as you enter the property. We didn't want to, this was intentional, no? This is the first thing you see in the museum, but we intentionally did not put an entrance here because we wanted to reinforce the idea of there's no beginning to the museum, no? So in this way, we felt that it forces the museum goers to wander first inside the property, and then decide for themselves whether to go to Hall 1 or go to Hall 2, or so it's not imposing a certain direction or flow right away for the museum goers. So that would lead them here, which is like the central part of the development, and then they have an option to go to that red bridge going to Hall 2, second floor of Hall 2, or they can go down to that ramp to the ground floor of Hall 2, or go to the left to Hall 1, where a courtyard is provided and waiting for them. In this courtyard, the children are encouraged to play with the artworks and be among the artworks, and they are also they also have the option to go to the different galleries of this hall. No? We wanted to keep the architecture very simple. Initially, we were thinking of, we discovered that Ibaan was known for this for their local mosquito nets, no, and which used as like a diffuser for direct sun exposure, no. So we wanted to use that, but we didn't want to do it literally, and so we came up with these screens, no. And it seems random, the spacing of the screens or the louvers, but the idea behind it was we wanted to filter in light that will be coming into the museum. At the same time, we didn't want to obstruct the view of the outside when you're in. So the spacing actually were based on different times of the day wherein the sun would directly hit the building. So as you can see, if the part of the building is shaded, then it allows us to make the louvers more to give the louvers more distance, no. So for those parts who will be exposed more to the sun, then the spacing would be closer. So this is the first gallery, no. Again, we wanted to bring in natural light, but at the same time, we also have to take into consideration how this natural light would affect the artworks. Then we also came up with transition spaces for the galleries, wherein it gave us an opportunity to somehow play with the spaces in terms of expansion and contraction. Again, it kind of plays with the feeling also of while you're going into these spaces, no. So there would be spaces that would be kind of tight, and then only to lead you to spaces that would open up to bigger galleries. So this is Hall 2. So this is the view from Hall 1. As I've mentioned previously, you can either go up to second floor of Hall 2 or go down to the ground floor, no? We also wanted to consider museum goers who would be on wheelchairs, parents who would be bringing their kids in strollers. So we wanted to minimize the use of steps as much as we can. And we wanted to utilize all the interesting spaces that were created by the architecture. Like, for instance, the space under the bridge, which could be an informal gathering space or hangout space for the museum goers. And as you've noticed also, we tried to not to impose too much on the property, and we've allotted a lot of space for unstructured activities such as this one that you're seeing right now. At the same time, these areas could also be spaces for art installations, outdoor installations. So this is Hall 2 of Tumba-Tumba. I'm just showing you some of the spaces outside the buildings. So it's pretty much it's like a park also, no? If wherein everyone is invited to explore the grounds and to be among the artworks also. Then for Hall 2, we tried to continue the architectural gesture that I've shown you for Hall 1. And these created some sort of tunnel-like spaces that lead you to the different galleries of the museum. So the interiors are very pretty much straightforward. Our goal was really just to create we wanted to create the spaces and let the curation take control of how it would turn out eventually. So like for this one, we wanted to make sure that there are enough space for books, not just artworks, because CANVAS wanted that wherever you are in the museum, there should always be books that you can just pick up and read and use, no? And at the same time, I wanted to create spaces where you can that allows CANVAS to use bigger artworks like this one. There's another hallway. It leads to a multimedia room wherein it allows the curation team and CANVAS to set up these kinds of events also and exhibits. Then this is the cafe shop. We decided to put it at the center because, as I mentioned a while ago, we wanted the museum goers to have the ability to navigate and not get lost, no? But at the same time, we didn't want to impose a certain direction on how you would explore the whole property. And so putting the cafe and the shop at the center provides some sort of like a reset, no, for the museum goers, that if ever they lose their companions, they could just go back to the center and, you know, and start all over again, no? So some images of the cafe. We tried to take advantage also of the natural topography or terrain of the property. And so for the cafe, you have an option to actually go down to the, this is actually the shop. You have an option to go down to the cafe, or you go up to the roof of the cafe and the shop, wherein more artworks are available for the visitors to appreciate. So this is the roof of the cafe and shop. And from here, you could basically see the entire development. We've also created some interventions, such as some shading devices, wherein it also, again, it provides opportunities for artworks to be installed and be experienced by the visitors. There's also an amphitheater that we provided so that there could be, so that CANVAS could hold events which require a bigger capacity. No? On the left of the image is actually AIR, or Artist in Residence. And it's one of the main programs of CANVAS wherein they host and support up and coming artists and support their art. And yeah, so that's AIR. So it's actually a small community for artists wherein they could, you know, concentrate on honing their craft. At the same time, this small community provides an opportunity for them to interact also and be more creative and productive. Yeah, so so I think this is my last slide, no? So again, we're very, very excited more than ever to be working with CANVAS for Tumba-Tumba. We started working with CANVAS, I think, for almost 2 years ago already, no? It's and we are anticipating that it's still going to be a long journey for everyone, but we're very excited, and thank you again for trusting Arkisens and for having us today. And again, congratulations on Gigo, on CANVAS, and of course to Jaime also on your 15th anniversary. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, Sir Chok. I hope our architecture students in the audience were listening, as well as our architecture enthusiasts, because designing for children is not a child's play. So we'd like to remind everyone again that if you
Thank
have
you.
questions or comments, just comment them below. And finally, we move to the last part: what's inside the dream and what goes into making it a reality. What do we put in a children's museum, and what should the children see? We now turn to Jaime Pacena II, or J Pacena, curator of CANVAS and of the current exhibition Seeking Balance. So Jaime Pacena II received his Bachelor in Fine Arts at the University of Santo Tomas with a major in Advertising Arts in 2001. He was a core member of Tutok, an active in-house curator for Canvas Gallery, and he's also the creative director of BM Lab, a technical and artistic support group for creative projects. So let's hear now from Sir J.
Hello, good afternoon. Wait, let me share my. Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is J Pacena. Jaime Pacena. Yeah. So now I would like to present to you the curatorial direction of Tumba-Tumba Children's Museum of Philippine Art. Very casually and informally. But I hope you will get to understand where we are coming from this idea, why we are putting this together. I think Sir Gigo already told you about the concept of the dream. Chok already run through how the process of designing went along for the past 2 years. And I think what I would like to be able to share to you today is the idea that all of this are not random. These are well thought of. The curatorial direction is not an afterthought. We work together with Arkisens in building the structure and the flow, you know, from visiting the area and understanding how our envisioning the space, how it will look like, and how the audience or the guest will be able to engage with the future museum. First, let me share what curatorial direction means for us. And this is all about how we want our target audience experience what the museum stands for. Canvas has been here for the past 15 years, and silent worker kami. We always pride ourselves with what we do. And I think for the past 15 years, we were able to really build something that is very clear on what we want to say, what we want to show. We have a very clear direction, programming, and if you really go through, like for example, if you visit, if you were able to visit or see the site of the Tumba-Tumba Seeking Balance exhibition, you will understand that we've really been investing in this concept for the past years. And Tumba-Tumba Children's Museum is one of the dream, and we want all of this investment to be realized in this space. Okay. So we'll start with this idea that a child with art and stories can change the world. This is our this is the heart and soul of what we do every time. And if we sum it up and if we break it down, you can see the child, the concept of child, or the keywords are child, art, stories, and world. I think those are very clear direction that we would like to translate to our audience. The Canvas has been investing its project for the children, and that we are working with art, and that you know that the art and the stories that we put together somehow will be able to show the children or the audience what the world we live in is all about, or how to navigate through the world that we all share. So this is what our main thrust is all about. This is basically the curatorial direction. But of course, how did we come about the main concept of no beginning and no end? And if we would like to somehow connect what we are trying to do here, our dream and our ambition is to be like Ghibli Museum. It's not just the experience of going through a museum and without a beginning and end. Parang you go around wherever you want to, tapos you experience Ghibli Museum as you experience the films itself. We want also something like that. We want the audience or the visitors to experience the stories that we put up the art that we have been trying to collect. Meaning, we're not just trying to collect objects; we're trying to collect ideas. For something that will form our sensibilities. That's the key point. We want to translate that to the audience. So, yung storya, yung mga libro that we are trying to produce, we've been producing for the past years, and we will be producing more. We want the museum to house that. So, meaning, if sa GD Museum may film, sa amin maraming libro. And that's one of the campaigns that we have. Diba? We have 1 million books for 1 million Filipino children. And we want that to be translated sa museum. Pero aside from that, of course, it's a big space. Again, as I mentioned kanina, hindi siya randomly placed. No? We thought of the spaces as we go through it. Of course, that architectural design is all about the technicalities of the design and how it's the architecture, it's the experience. But katulad nga ng pag-uusap namin nila Chok, nila Sir Gigo, as we go through it over the past 2 years, it's all about how the experience will be for the audience. Paano paano yung flow para sa kanila? Ano yung makikita nila? Importante. So when we were trying to do it, when we were trying to develop it, we were thinking of starting with the whole one, something like parang self-building. We want to highlight the idea of tao and mundo. Ano ba to? Ano ba yung tao at mundo? Just hindi lang siya about the collection pieces. It's not just about the collection pieces. It's also what the collection stands for, or ano yung storya that we have collected from the past years. No? So we want to show you as we go through the space, as we enter. This area is basically a free play. We wanted this particular space for the kids to play around with. Tapos may mga books lang dyan and everything that they can actually touch, that they can actually play. No? Parang yun yung simula eh. We want to initiate that. We want them to understand that this particular space is for them to be comfortable with. Hindi siya yung tipong katulad ng ibang museum that no touch, no picture, etc. This is a free-flowing space. No? Ito, lalo na dito. But then we go inside. We go inside in this space, very structured, very it's a space, it's a container. But the container that we would like to highlight inside the container, the things that we would like to highlight are these keywords. The keywords that you will see here are all about the idea that we would like to translate sa tao, the whole one tao. And this is all about children, the idea of play, the idea of dreams, the idea of learning. Then after that, we wanted also to talk about family. We wanted to talk about relationship, more complex ideas of connection. And then from those connection, we will try to build their aspiration. From there, mas magiging complex ulit. We wanted the dialogue to talk about opportunities. When we talk about children, ano ba yung opportunities? When we talk about play or movement, there are also the idea of challenges. When we talk about family, when we talk about connection and relationship, there are sacrifices. When we talk about learning, there are conditions. So all of these things will be translated in that whole one. Of course, these are ideas. No? These are the things that we would like to translate. Then from there, memories will be built. The idea of faith and tradition will be strengthened. So from this concept, from these keywords, we will try to, of course, figure out kung paano yung collection and how the years will teach us para ma-translate it dito sa whole one, which is the tao. From whole one, of course, ang bottom line pala nun, bago ko makalimutan, is all about finding your identity. Whole one tao is all about finding your identity. It's all about understanding our identity, and we want to translate that with the children that will visit our space, or the museum. So that's a clear direction for that particular hall. Of course, there will be programming as we go along. There will be programming. There will be like a curatorial walkthrough or educational programs for the children, or some of the things that we are thinking about is child development programs for us to discuss all of this. No? From there, we go to Hall 1, Mundo. So we will have a bridge. This is the bridge. So we will go through the bridge. It's like a break. Whether you go first sa Mundo and go to the bridge and then experience Tao after Mundo, it's okay. I think it goes both ways naman eh. Our experience in understanding ourselves sometimes starts with understanding the world, or vice versa. So when we go to Mundo, which is Gallery 2, we now show works that highlights history, works that highlights society. So mas malaki na, hindi na to tungkol sa isang tao lang. Hindi na to tungkol sa comfort zone mo sa pamilya mo. Meron ng society na ginagalawan. Diba? It talks about spiritual, talks about religion. More complex things can be discussed in this particular part. And when we talk about religion, of course, there are a lot of different things. Politics, media, and of course, hindi natin kakalimutan yung konsepto ng environment. All of these things, we have been working with these ideas for the past 15 years. Hindi to bago. No? Hindi siya biglang idea lang. We've been investing in this for the past few years, and we want Tumba-Tumba Museum to house all of these ideas. Freedom. From Hall 1, we go now to Hall 2. We call Hall 2 the upper level, which is, well, you will see, no? Imahe na siya. Upper level and lower level. So from Hall 1, we go to this bridge. We enter this hall, and we will see Hall 2, Imahe na siya. In this part, we highlight a space that is that will house exhibitions that are changing. Yung mas madalas na nagbabago. And from this, we wanted to highlight the idea of wordless storytelling. But wordless storytelling will be translated in all of the halls, in all of the spaces that Tumba-Tumba Children's Museum will be housing. So the idea of wordless storytelling will be parang tumatawid yan sa different spaces that we have in the museum. But from this, dito kami tatanggap ng mga we will accept proposals, we will work with new artists or artists that is not part of our collection, or some new ideas that will come about. No? Dito namin siya gusto i-house. And the main concept is wordless storytelling. Still about stories, still about navigating through narration or narratives, stories. Ano yung gusto mo ikwento, how your work actually talks to children. No? Yun yung gusto namin dito. And part of this space, Hall 2, is all about magic. No? Then we go to the idea of magic from this space. We have the idea of multimedia room. The multimedia room is not just housing a dark room. Multimedia room eh. So ibig sabihin, it's more complex. It can house more complex works. The idea of presenting a multimedia exhibition like this. Wordless storytelling pa rin, but it's moving. It's more engaging for the audience. Performance, multimedia performance. Again, wordless. We want this part to be imaginative. Parang mas malawak yung imahinasyon. From this, we're breathing from the idea of identity and the world. No? Ito pwedeng mas sobrang lawak na. Pwede na siyang talagang imagination. It's really going through the imagination of people, of artists and the audience. The experience is different as well. But we go down. As we go down, we house much more complex ideas. And from the lower ground of Hall 2, we will highlight karapatan at kalayaan. These are changing exhibitions, both permanent and not permanent collection. So kalayaan at karapatan, again, is a space, but will highlight human rights, children's rights, freedom, works that talks about the martial law, works that talks about social realities. Lahat yan nandito. And we talk about children's rights, tulad sinabi ko, and human rights in general. And these are more complex things that we would like to translate to the children, but we would like to show it here. And it works like that. Children's rights. Like for example, this one is made by Ang Inc., a group by Renz Puluyot. And then from the outside, lahat ng ideas na yun can all still be seen. Like for example, we are thinking of putting installations. Like for example, this one is Marcus Cunyan's The Settlement, and a lot of different things. No? And part of what we want to translate in Tumba-Tumba, in the experience is the curatorial direction also extends to the concept of canvas air, housing artists, new ideas, new practices, processes, exploration, investigation on ideas. That yan can be housed in the canvas air. So this is our dream. Simply put, we just want to make sure that the idea of the children is clear, that the stories and the art that we present over the past 15 years and more, will be shown in that space. And that the whole concept of this is building a world, and that we are all trying to navigate through. Yep. So basically, that's the core concept of what the curatorial direction of Tumba-Tumba Children's Museum of Philippine Art is all about. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sir Jay. So now that we have an idea of the art and the themes, what will be put inside the museum, we're now more than excited to actually see the museum in the flesh. Kahit matanda na kami. All right. So we'd like to thank all the speakers for sharing their ideas with us today. If you have questions, some of viewers natin today, you can comment them below. So before we move to the Q&A, we'd also like to share that Canvas has been a long-time partner of the Vargas Museum. And in 2018, the proof of concept exhibit for Tumba-Tumba Museum was actually held here at the Vargas. So Canvas has also exhibited here at the Vargas the Looking for Juan banner show, exhibits based on the children's books that they have published, among others. Okay, now we move to the Q&A. We'll read the questions you typed in the comments and we'll hear from Sir Gigo, Sir Chok, and Sir Jay. So I'd like to remind the panelists to turn on their mics and video. All right. So we have a question from Gino Estela. Where does the art education come in terms with the design language? Like he wonders if a child could naturally or without supervision learn from the objects and exhibits in display. So parang saan daw po yung art education? Where does the art education come in? Like in what elements po of the museum? Like are there certain specific elements in the museum architecture, the curation, na talagang made for art education? And will the children be allowed ba to, without supervision, kaya ba nila mag-navigate through the museum? Okay, so that's from Gino, from Gino Estela.
Yeah, anybody would like to?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we emphasize in the museum is that it has to be interactive. If you've gone through our past exhibits, yung proof of concept namin sa Vargas Museum, the exhibits were always complemented by activities designed to get the children engaged with artwork and to get a deeper sense of what we wanted to convey. Aside from that, of course, as I think Jay mentioned kanina, that there will be curatorial talks along the way. There will be guides. We will come out with activities for the children to do, in a way, parang challenges for them to do while they're in the museum. And it's all designed to get them involved and engaged so that they can learn on their own. the other thing that we want to do here is that we want them to be able to be free to run, no, and not to be afraid to touch anything. So even we will figure out a way to protect the artworks from from their hand. Pero it will be designed in a way that doesn't restrict movement, doesn't restrict curiosity. So yun yung mga iniisip namin dyan.
All right. Sir Jay, Sir Chok, any thoughts? Art education?
Yeah, I think
sige, Chok, ikaw muna, sige.
Sir Chok?
I would just like to echo no yung sinabi ni Gigo, and I think from the very start it was clear naman the directive no that the spaces should not be restricting. Of course, the issue on safety will definitely be considered, but the main goal is to allow the visitors, especially the children, to be to be free to roam around and explore the grounds and the museum, and even the artworks themselves. No? So I think in that sense, that could play a big part in the art education angle, no? Or a component of the museum.
I think just to add to that, ayun nga, one of our inspiration is the Ghibli Museum, and we really wanted to translate that experience to Tumba-Tumba and more, of course. No? Although what we've been trying to do for the past years and what we showed are paintings or sculptures, it is not limited to that. The idea of the museum is not limited to that, and the idea of the experience is not limited to that. Sometimes if we put a painting in front of a kid and put an activity in front of him, in front of that particular work, that's an engagement na eh. Like for example, if we are isa sa mga ideas that come up with us is like we have this particular map or passport that the children can actually complete. So from there, when they enter the museum, they have a task already in mind. They have something that they will need to do for them to be engaged with. It's not just about looking the artworks. It's not just about trying to understand what the painting is all about. Nandoon na, meron na siyang programming agad. And we wanted to highlight that, of course, pagka nagawa na namin yung space. But one of the ideas that we are looking at is that, no? Pagpasok ng, kumbaga, ang inisip nga namin, hindi to pwede na walk-in ka lang. Meron kang schedule. Again, for those who have visited Ghibli Museum, naka-schedule ka na. Hindi ka pwedeng basta-basta mag-walk-in. And pagka nabili mo yung ticket mo, meron kang parang kit. And that kit includes the passport or a map that you will look for a particular work that will engage with you. Tapos we're looking, because if you've seen our books as well, marami kami activity books. And all of those activity books will be there. No? All of those activities that engages the kids by holding the book and by looking at the work will be there. So, yun, I think one of the things that we need to further research and further develop is the idea of developing a child, no? With all of this engagement and all of these activities that we're trying to do. So, yeah, that's
Magdadagdag lang din. Yeah, I'd just like to add na I know Jay mentioned the Ghibli Museum, pero we've actually drawn inspiration from a number of museums. A couple of years ago, I was fortunate enough to be given a grant to do a museum tour. So marami kaming ideas na nakuha from other museums. One that comes to mind is kunyari yung sa San Diego Children's Museum San Diego Children's Museum. They work with artists and they challenge the artists to come up with spaces designed to engage the children and have them interact directly with the works. No? So when we talk about educating children through art, we will also be relying on artist partners. Jay mentioned that there will be changing exhibitions. That's part of the idea for the changing exhibitions. It's not just to keep the experience fresh, but it's also to keep the ideas coming for how we can be more effective in engaging with children.
All right. So we have another question from Joseph Kua. A comment and a question actually. He says, "This is so wonderful. Are there plans to integrate natural shade for the very open amphitheater or water pockets like ponds or falls, placements of fragrant native and endemic blooms to stimulate not just the sight but also the smell?" So it's all about architecture. So I think Sir Chok,
Yeah.
yung integration po ng nature, natural elements of the land.
Well, that is actually a main consideration, no? Even before we started with any single plan, no? As I mentioned kanina, we wanted to impose as little as possible to the property, to the existing condition of the site. That's why we had to work around. We had to work with existing terrain. We had to weave through the existing mango trees. But it's a very interesting question. No? That the issue on the amphitheater also was once a part of our numerous discussions. No? We are definitely considering it. Although at this point, we wanted to keep the intervention as minimal as possible muna. No? If we could design or do something that is not as permanent, then that would be preferred and ideal. No? Kasi kung maglalagay na kami agad dyan ng mga fixed canopies or mga shades, no, it might be limiting also in terms of the curation and the program that is planned or will be planned for the grounds, no, not just the interior spaces. So yeah, consideration naman siya definitely, and it's thank you for the question, Joseph Juan.
Yeah, one of the things that we've also done actually is we've actually hired a young horticulturist, no, graduate ng UPLB. She's very young, pero the task that we've assigned her is to become an expert on the gardens and on what are ideal for the place. And one of the ideas that we're playing with is a garden for all the senses. So it's a garden where children can walk and they can touch, feel, taste, hear different things, see. So we're looking, when we talk about the museum, I know we concentrated on the inside, pero the experience and the entire idea of the museum is also integrates the outside.
Actually, we have more questions coming in about architecture and decoration. So another question is for the architectural and curatorial vision of the museum. Say budgetary constraints mar the exact and faithful construction of the planned museum. What would perhaps be the priority features that would non-negotiably stay in the completed structure? Like what are the real highlights of the museum? And another question about the architecture, how will the museum handle environmental problems like rain? Like may isang gallery na open yung taas yung walls, baka maulanan or mahanginan yung paintings. Like it's also part of collections management, diba? Kasi we, as shared din sa mga slides kanina, very faithful to the land yung architecture. So how do we address yung ganon ulan and yung priority features?
Ano naman yun, I think hindi lang siguro masyadong evident with some of the renders, no, pero the interior views that they saw, while they can see from the inside the sunshade device from the outside, definitely meron namang glass enclosure yun, no. Again, at this point it's still, we're still considering whether those could be fixed or open or operable. But big consideration would be how we could assess the sensitivity and the specific requirements of the artworks that would be housed eventually, no. So we've been working on this for almost 2 years, but I would say that we are still in early days pa rin, no? And we are still learning in the progress. So yeah, but definitely the elements are big considerations, especially we are in a tropical country, no? So yeah.
What about collections management, Sir J? Like anything special about yung collections management? Kasi minsan po 'di ba in children in museums kahit may supervision, very tactile sila. So parang how do we take care of the collection if ganito po yung consideration natin for our main audiences?
I think it will go to that concept once na nandoon na eh. I think all of these things will be well thought of in terms of how to place the works or how the panels are parang installed or kung ano yung mga parameters, even lighting and shade and installation process that we will think about. Yeah, we are studying that. We are considering those things, especially that we really want the experience to be as fluid as possible. It's we don't want every time that the children will be told do not touch the artwork or because if we needed to like place a glass in front of the work or a casing, then we should be able to do that. Or like yung mga tawag dito yung mga harang or ano, but we wanted it to be as natural as possible eh. Pero darating kami doon when everything will be when we have parang pag doon na kami sa point na yun. At this time wala pa kasi dun sa mga details in terms of really how to navigate through that. But we are considering those things. We are studying those things. And like for example, I think the mention kung ano yung ipaprioritize. I think one of the things that we would like to prioritize first is the whole one. We start from there, and kaya yung dialogue is or yung idea inside that, yun muna yung tao at mundo muna. Then we will develop each parts accordingly. And we don't want to rush things, no? Parang even Sir Gigo mentioned, kahit na ito lang muna yung gawin, and we start from here, at least buo yung konsepto. Then that will, of course, help sustain the other parts, no? Like hall 2 and everything around it. So parang we build it, well, the dream is to build it gradually, so phases by phases. So I think the first priority is to build hall 1, and put all of our energies and ideas in that one, and then build hall 2.
Yeah, and I think parang we felt that it might ruin also the experience if you'd be constantly policing the visitors, no, or not, don't touch this, etc. Although yun nga, we definitely considered those issues initially, kahit preliminary pa lang, like if you can recall some of the images for the interior architecture, there are the spaces allow for displays to be sort of like embedded inside the walls, para may mga niche. So, diba, in that sense, you still get to appreciate the artwork, pero it's behind a glass window or a protective covering, for example, diba? So, very kasi yun nga sabi ko kanina, at the end of the day, it's also going to be very specific with the lineup of the artworks, no. Pero we definitely considered that early on, and we are positive naman that that was reflected dun sa mga initial discussions and renderings and designs namin. So.
All right. So I think we have time for one last question and actually one last comment about the future of Tumba-Tumba. So the comment is from Patricia Asuncion. I hope that this museum will be accessible to children not only from middle class or well-off families, but also to underprivileged kids. And the last question from Ed Sorcilia Rivera: what are the future programs or the next steps for the project to become a reality?
See, I'll answer first kay Patricia. Um, Thank you for the questions. I think one of the things the Canvas prides on is that yun nga, we're not doing this for well-off people. I think you can see naman in the programs that we did for the past years, the books that we produce are actually yung concept namin ng 1 million books for 1 million Filipino children. We produce these books to give away to disadvantaged communities. Marami na rin kaming programs aside from book giving or book reading or emphasizing about literature and art for the disadvantaged communities or children. We also host a lot of museum visits. No? Parang minsan sa Vargas, meron kami ini-invite na ibang mga estudyante that we actually parang sponsor. Hindi kami, but we work with different partners. And all of this are engaged with the program that we do in Canvas that we also would like to translate pagdating sa Tumba-Tumba Museum. Maybe Sir Gigo can add more to that. Sir, naka-mute ka.
Yeah, it's a good question kasi the challenge really of a museum is how do you make it sustainable, diba? So there are a lot of ideas there. We can create an endowment. The most usual thing is you charge for entry, no? And then the question then becomes how much do you charge?
Right.
So we've been doing a lot of research on that then. And the best answer so far that we've found is that when you price entrance to a museum, the best practice is to price it based on what is the cost of a movie. No? So if a lot of people will be able to afford going to movies. And if they're willing to pay a certain amount to go to a movie, they should be willing to pay that amount sa museum. No? So that's one thing that we're exploring. Na if we price it at the same price as a movie, will that make it more democratic, no? More accessible? But of course, the other idea that we have and pretty much we're committed to is that we will have certain days that are allocated just for public schools. And that will be either be subsidized or maybe we can get corporate sponsors to sponsor children so that they can visit the museum. It's a question that we will continue to explore as we try to build this museum. So rest assured that it's not far from our minds na if we really want to empower children, we have to talk about empowering the children who need it most, and those would be our more disadvantaged brothers and sisters.
All right, definitely agree with you, Sir Gigo. So I think that's all the time we have for today's talk. Again, we would like to thank Sir Gigo, Sir Chok, and Sir Jay for sharing their ideas about the dream that is the Tumba-Tumba Children's Museum of Philippine Art. We ourselves can't wait to step inside this interactive, memorable, and engaging museum where children can run, explore, learn, and be unafraid. And we also like to thank our 44 strong viewers who tuned in with us today. So maraming salamat. Okay. We thank everyone for supporting the initiatives of the Vargas Museum, CANVAS, and Arkisens. Seeking Balance will run until October 3, 2020. Online content of the exhibition is available on the social media platforms of the Vargas Museum and CANVAS. Okay. You can also find Vargas Museum at vargasmuseum.upd, on Instagram as UP Vargas Museum, and Twitter also as UP Vargas Museum. We also have video content up on our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/UP Vargas Museum. Okay, so content about Seeking Balance is also available on the social media platforms of CANVAS. You can find Canvas at facebook.com/canvas.ph, and they're also on Instagram as canvasph.art. You can also check canvas.ph and tumbatumba.ph. To know more about Arkisens, visit facebook.com/Arkisens. You can also find them on Instagram as Arkisens. Again, we would like to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. And we'd also again like to invite everyone to virtually view the exhibition Seeking Balance on the social media platforms of Vargas and Canvas. Okay, once again, we thank everyone for joining us today. Wear a mask, observe social distancing, practice hand hygiene, and stay at home. Good afternoon and keep safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Salamat.